Hello, everyone. My name is Mr. Anderson, and I am mean to people on the internet. I try to be polite about it, though. I just tend to ask people difficult questions and insist on the answers. You can think of my channel as kind of like a self defense course for getting into fights on the internet, or usually, anyways. Today, however, I'm very fortunate in that I have a guest who is fixing to break some science news on Little Old Me's channel, which is pretty darn exciting. My guest here is a man who needs no introduction, but will get one anyway. This is the illustrious Jackson Rowe. Say hi, Jackson.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm well, and how are you?
Doing good.
Now,
Doing good.
last time we were together, somebody told me that I had no experience in digging in the dirt and therefore I didn't know anything about fossils. I
Really?
understand that's not really true for you. Is that fair?
I've discovered probably hundreds, if not over 1,000 fossils at this point. Yeah, a lot of fossils.
That sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You discovered any recently?
the one I have now, though, someone actually sent to me from North Carolina, and that's what we'll be talking about a little today.
Well, that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me turn it over to you then. Please tell us what exciting news you have.
All right. Well, I'll just start talking about it, and I have some images I'll show of it in a minute. And I have something from China that kind of ties in with it. This is about the Ediacaran period, which is the pre-Cambrian.
Okay.
Okay, and the creationists make a huge deal out of the Cambrian explosion. I think a lot of creationists tend to think everything appears in the Cambrian, and there's nothing before it. And a lot of creationists, like layman creationists, probably think elephants and birds are appearing in the Cambrian also, which obviously didn't happen. But
so tell us a little bit, just like, I mean, remember my audience is, well, my audience is probably smarter than me, but let's just play down to my level. So the Cambrian explosion happened like about 500 million years ago. Is that right?
Roughly 500 million, yeah.
Okay. And before that, what was alive on the Earth?
The Ediacaran period, that's
Yeah.
the area just before. It's almost exclusively soft-bodied organisms. And most of them are very difficult to classify. They're really weird animals. Or if there are animals, a lot of them might not even be animals. But
Okay. Soft
yeah.
body organisms, were any very big, or were they all like pretty small?
They vary. The one I have is about like that, about 4 inches, I would say.
Okay.
And they can get bigger than that. A lot of them are smaller, but they weren't huge. And some of them have weird triradial symmetry, which isn't really a thing anymore. And
Well, that's fascinating. Like very much like I don't know if you ever read Rendezvous with Rama, which is like a science fiction novel, and the aliens in that book were trilaterally similar, trilaterally symmetrical. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that's
kind of
probably got it from Ediacaran fossils. That idea.
Man, that's crazy. So something straight out of a science fiction novel.
Yeah, it really is.
Oh
But
man.
the fossil I have was found by a man named Brandon. He lives in North Carolina. He found it. He posted to Facebook, and I happened to see it just by looking up some keywords one day. So I thought, hey, maybe someone's found this. And by chance, I see someone has found this. He says, it kind of looks like a feather. What is this? And I say, I know what that is. Message me quick, because it's a big deal. And so I tell him, say again?
What was it?
Pteridinium carolinensis, which a handful of them were found in the 1980s, and since then no one's been able to find one until now. And
Okay.
And he happened to stumble upon it in a riverbed.
But what is it like? Because this may shock you. I don't know what that word that you said sounded very impressive. I don't know what it means.
Well, it sounds more impressive than it is. It looks like just kind of like a feather, like he described it, on a slab of rock. And it's pretty weathered, but you can tell it was definitely an Ediacaran organism. It's a pretty good fossil as far as Ediacaran fossils go.
But what did it look like when it was alive? Did it move around? Was it attached to the ground?
They think it was attached to the ground. They're not actually 100% sure. That's
kind of like a crinoid?
Say again?
Kind of like a crinoid?
It could have been.
Okay.
With these, they're not sure. I can bring up a picture of the fossil real quick. Let me
Yeah, I'm
I'll share the
fascinated.
screen.
I love this
Yeah.
stuff. This is amazing.
Yeah.
If you wanted an eager audience member, you came to the right place.
I always forget how to do this for a second. I think it's
You just gotta like share your screen, and then I'll pop it up onto the thing. There we go.
it should. All right, it should be up here.
Oh yeah, it kind of looks like a piece of salmon.
Tell me when you're seeing this.
I see it.
Oh yeah, I didn't think of that. It really does look like a salmon fillet, but
But
it
don't eat
has
it because it's raw.
these segments. Yeah, it's rock.
So
It has
tell me
these
what I'm looking at.
segments in it, in this midline. Really, it's hard to describe what it is, and that's the interesting thing about this fossil. The scientists have told me there are some interesting things about this one that are different a little bit from the other specimens. So I'm actually taking it up to the university in Missouri in a couple of weeks to get it micro CT scanned and imaged in other ways. They're pretty excited about it, actually.
Yeah,
And
really?
we're
That,
actually going to write.
'cause not all fossils get that kind of treatment, do they?
No, they don't. Not all fossils do. And
Okay, well, so this you have something special here then.
yeah,
Well, that's really awesome.
yeah, it's definitely unique.
So what makes it
But
so
the
unique?
thing that we
I
might
mean,
find,
you don't find salmon fillet shaped rocks in the dirt every day, obviously. But other than looking delicious, what is so cool about it?
well, the thing that's so interesting about it is its rarity, because Ediacaran fossils are all soft-bodied, so they don't fossilize easily. So finding one's pretty rare. Well, this one anyway. Some of them are more common than others, but they're all generally not easy to find. And when you can image it, and being that this one is different than the other ones, it might be able to deduce what it actually is. Is it a cnidarian? Is it a colony of microorganisms that's not even an animal? And we might be able to find that out with this fossil. So that's the interesting.
So that'd be the idea of like, I mean, because that's one of the really interesting things that as I've learned more and more about biology, I've found out there's like this kind of very sort of fuzzy line between single-celled and multicellular organisms, in that like a single-celled organism can form like quite a complex cooperative colony that like looks like an animal. Like I think it's like a man-o-war jellyfish is actually like a colony. It's not a jellyfish. And like each one of them is their own. It's almost like this. It's like a city of microorganisms that takes the shape of a jellyfish. And then by the same token, in a sense, you are a colony of microorganisms. It's just that every single one of them has been kind of rounded up and like given a job. And like, your skin cells they're just independent living skin cells that happen to have a particular job and cooperate with the rest of your body. And what's even crazier is that sometimes those those cells that have been rounded up and given jobs, sometimes some of them quit and decide they don't want to be part of your body anymore. They're just going to go back to living as single-celled organisms, and then they just start growing and living as single-celled organisms inside your body. And that's something that happens. It's a problem that we call cancer, and that is what at least some types of cancer are.
Yeah.
So it's like there is this sort of fuzzy line between, what is a single-celled organism and what is what is a multicellular organism and what is a colony. You're saying this might kind of fall like very much in that gray zone?
It could. It's
that would be pretty exciting, hey?
Yeah.
That would be devastating too, because I mean, you and I both debate creationists quite often. You found something that was kind of like straddling that line, and it's like, is this a colony? Is it a multicellular organism? Like, kind of both, kind of neither. Like, that'd be interesting. I mean, it wouldn't set the world on fire, but it would be sure as heck interesting for us. But you think this might set the world on fire in kind of a more significant conventional way, though?
Yeah. And another interesting find that's not related to me, but it's related to the same time period that was just published a couple of weeks ago, actually, is this first conclusive sponge that was found in the Ediacaran, which is significant because creationists like Stephen Meyer and Gunter Beckley and all those at the Discovery Institute, their whole thing is a Cambrian explosion. Everything appears then. All the phyla appear then. Now we have phyla appearing before that. Some of them.
Right. Yeah. Because Cambrian explosion is typically what we think of. Like that's why I asked you. I was like, does in the Ediacaran, like, was there multicellular life? Because like I was kind of not sure
Mm-hmm.
how much multicellular life there even was prior to the Cambrian explosion. Is that generally true? That like generally speaking, you find fossils of microorganisms prior to the Cambrian explosion, but in terms of like actual like animals, pretty much then that's when it kind of starts. Is that right, or am I misremembering?
There are some conclusive multicellular organisms from the Ediacaran, and now especially with the sponge. And
So that's why it's a big deal, is because like it's not like generally speaking, we don't see multicellular organisms prior to the Cambrian explosion. Is
we
that
don't
right?
see the complexity of them before the Cambrian, but now more and more fossils are being found in the Ediacaran, and it's kind of making it more of a gradient. So it's lessening this so-called explosion. And
Oh,
even after the Cambrian and the Ordovician, there was another diversification. I mean, things keep radiating. It's not just all in a little period of the Cambrian. Is the more fossils that are found is what is becoming true.
right. Because I remember reading or seeing a video or something that said that like one of the reasons the Cambrian explosion sort of was so significant, and one of the reasons it happened was because somebody figured out predation, and
Mm-hmm.
then that set off an arms race, and things started getting better and better at eating other animals, and those other animals started developing defense mechanisms, and so that's when you saw like the first shells and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's like, you can't eat me because you can't bite me, right?
Exactly. Things like this came about in the Cambrian, this little trilobite.
Yeah, and those had shells, right? That's why they preserve so well.
Exoskeletons, yeah.
And what's up
Yeah.
with their? Is they like because their eyes fossilized, right? Aren't their eyes supposed to be
Mhm.
soft?
Their eyes are calcite, I believe. But yeah,
So their eyes have bone in them.
kind of like glass eyes almost. Calcite eyes, yeah.
This is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I know that's not what you wanted to, you came on to talk about, but I appreciate you just indulging my curiosity. So, okay, so going back to we're gonna take a quick side tour to this find from China with the sponges. So you said like the first sponges
Mm-hmm.
were found in China, and sponges are. We're not talking about the kind of thing I use to do the dishes here. We're talking
Right.
about the animal sponges, and if I remember correctly, and I'm just going from memory here because I didn't prepare for this interview, but if I remember correctly, one of the cool things about sponges is they are a multicellular organism, or they're considered to be a multicellular organism.
Yes.
But they also, like, if you strain a sponge into like and break it down into like tiny particles, it will rearrange itself back into a multicellular organism. You can put it through like a sieve,
Mm-hmm.
and each bit of it is kind of also sort of self-contained, but then they'll assemble again and start to work together, and so they're really like kind of in that transitional gradient.
Mm-hmm.
And
And that's another interesting thing about this sponge because it wasn't like that.
oh really?
Modern sponges are made up of spicules and these rigid mineralized structures, and this sponge wasn't. It was soft.
Mm.
And yeah.
So tell us a bit about this sponge, and what else makes it different, because a regular sponge is a filter feeder, right? So like the
Mhm.
sponge kind of makes a bunch of tubes essentially that suck the water in and shoot it back out and grab the nutrients from it and then spread it out amongst all of the parts, basically. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And apparently
And
this was doing that too. It just was a bit more primitive than later sponges, not a mineralized kind of skeleton. It's fairly simple in that regard. Not simple, but and just the
basal.
location of it in the strata being Ediacaran
Hmm.
is very significant.
Okay, so that kind of pushes back the evolution of multicellularity, I guess, a little bit past the Cambrian explosion. Um,
And and when the phyla originate, Because one of the favorite arguments is that all the phyla originate in the Cambrian, or a little after a couple of them, but they seem to all come here. But now we're finding Cnidaria and porifera sponges in the Ediacaran. So it's now spread out into more of a gradient.
Right. But I guess that more maybe starts to make it a little bit clearer why your find is so interesting, because it looks even more complex than even a sponge, because a sponge kind of looks like a blob kind of.
Well,
it looks like a sponge from a kitchen sink. It doesn't look like much of anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But your thing looks like a chicken, or sorry, like a salmon fillet, which has a whole bunch of internal structure. So that doesn't belong that deep.
Yeah, it could be a big find in that regard, or it could be discovered that this is just a collection of microbes in some weird pattern. But that's what we hope to find out, maybe with this particular fossil. Or we actually plan to go to the spot it was found this fall to look for more material. So that'd be pretty interesting.
And how do you know it's from the Precambrian?
Well, it was found in Stanley County, which is the Carolina Slate Belt, is what it's called. And all that's Precambrian strata. That's where these have come from before. So when I found it, I actually typed in Stanley County, North Carolina fossil and see if anyone had posted anything they had found there. And sure enough, someone had posted a photo of what I recognize would be a pteridinium.
How did you know? Like, I mean, do you just have this encyclopedic knowledge of like really obscure kinds of fossils, or?
I wouldn't say encyclopedic.
I
wouldn't say encyclopedic, but I do know a lot about some fossils that most people never heard of.
So basically, what you're saying is, I wouldn't say encyclopedic, but yeah, basically, I have an encyclopedic knowledge of fossils.
Well, that's kind of my main area in this whole creation evolution debate. I kind of focus on fossils.
Yeah, well, clearly, that's pretty impressive.
Genetics and all that. Like,
I mean, I think we should all just kind of stop and like give props to somebody who can just go, "Oh, that's a," and then say the word that I mean, you've told it to me 3 times and I can't even remember. Like, and it's one of however many that you can kind of recognize. Like, that's pretty impressive. So that's incredibly cool, and a big deal, because that's the only thing that's going to allow this fossil to see the light of day. Right? Is that somebody recognized what it was and recognized its significance. So, like, that's super exciting.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I can see now why they want to CAT scan it, because CAT scanning a fossil is not something, and I'd have just been like, it's probably crinoid. That's good. And I'd have felt proud of myself for knowing the word crinoid.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to know how many people have found these and just threw them aside. It's just because they look pretty insignificant to them. They probably happened quite a bit. Yeah,
I would. Well, I mean, I would have been like, cool, and I'd have taken it home and I'd have put it on a shelf or something. I'd be like, I found a fossil. Look at me. But that's amazing.
Yeah, I have another kind of some arguments I use with the creationism. My favorite one is called the shark tooth problem. Erica has the heat problem. Yeah, it's the shark tooth problem. And so these soft-bodied animals are all fossilizing before the flood, where they just, the Cambrian is the start of the flood. They say the sediment of the flood. Before that, the Ediacaran is supposed to be pre-flood. So why are we not finding fossilized shark teeth in that pre-Cambrian area? Because between the fall of Eden and Noah's flood, that ocean, you have hundreds of years for sharks to shed their teeth and for those to hit the ocean floor and get fossilized. So we should be finding, if creationism is true, we should be finding shark teeth and all kinds of dense fossils in the Ediacaran, and we're not.
Well, why? Why should we? Because, I mean, like, maybe the sharks didn't live in those, I guess, areas. I mean, like, do you find shark teeth at the bottom of the ocean everywhere around the world, or?
That's the thing. That's one of the creationist counterpoints, and my response to that is there are hundreds of shark species, and they're pretty much living in every ocean environment. And even if they weren't, you would get their dermal denticles washed into every other environment they weren't in.
Right. So if I were to take a random square meter of any given part of the bottom of the ocean, I'm likely to find, if not shark teeth, then shark denticles, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I would say pretty much anywhere in the ocean you would find dermal denticles.
Right. And dermal denticles just means like shark skin scales, kind of.
Scales, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because they're not technically scales, but they're kind of like scales.
Yeah, and you're telling me in the whole Ediacaran outcrops that are exposed to several places in the world, there's never been any of those found. Never conodont teeth, never fish dermal plates, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing.
There's no, yeah. Those are things that you would expect to find at the bottom of the ocean, because you find them at the bottom of the ocean everywhere at the bottom of the ocean these days because they're ubiquitous.
Yeah.
But they're not at the bottom of any ocean before the Cambrian explosion.
Well, they're not even in the Cambrian, the shark teeth and dermal denticles, and you would think they would be.
Right. Shark teeth and dermal denticles only arise like around when, slightly before the dinosaurs, I think, right?
About Devonian period, yeah.
Yeah.
They've found some putative denticles in the late Ordovician,
which is the one after the Cambrian, right?
It's just after the Cambrian. But they think they haven't found any teeth there because they were likely jawless at this point, which is pretty weird. Which is weird to think about. Kind of like it wouldn't be a true shark at this point, but a shark-like animal still on a jawless fish.
Do they still have teeth if they don't have jaws?
They wouldn't have teeth, potentially. That's what they think. They're finding dermal denticles in the late Ordovician, but no teeth yet. Anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. They are finding dermal denticles, but no teeth, and then later they find teeth.
And later they find teeth. Yeah, it's pretty weird.
That is weird. So that's like partway through the flood. Partway through the flood, we start seeing.
Yeah. And there's no reason that makes any sense. Like this with hydrologic sorting or ecologic zonation, the creationist arguments. There's no way. I mean, you really have to just deny reality to look at the fossil record and say this was all made by one flood.
Wow, you wouldn't. I mean, you're not telling me you think creationists are denying reality, are you?
Well,
pretty bold claim.
Yeah. But yeah, pretty interesting finds, and I don't know if the Discovery Institute's published anything on that sponge. I'm not sure how they're going to spin that, because their whole thing is there are no predecessors in the Ediacaran, and now there definitely is one.
Well, now there are two.
Potentially.
Maybe two.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that is really exciting. Can you throw those pictures up again to show us some more pretty pictures? I think this.
Let me show you the picture of the sponge also.
Yeah.
Hang on. Oh, it takes me a minute to do this. All right, should be back. Yeah.
Yes. Now I have to do things. There we go.
Pteridinium carolinensis. This has a silent P like pterodactyl.
Cool.
And let me find the. Oh, that's not where it is. Here's the sponge that they found. China. This is the sponge. Can you see it?
It looks like a shoe's footprint.
It really does, yeah. A lot of the Ediacaran fossils are kind of hard to identify. Like most people would see this and think it's just some kind of rock formation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of, they're hard to identify conclusively a lot of times. But
that's thank you so much for this, Jackson. That is fascinating. Fascinating stuff. And it turns out that could actually be pretty big news. I feel important now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that this fossil came to me. It's pretty unlikely, and very, very lucky to have it. So it's pretty cool.
Well, I think we're all lucky to have experienced this with you. Okay, is there anything else that we should talk about here before we go? Do you want to give your channel a plug?
Yeah, just my channel's name is Jackson Rowe. I think someone posted it in the chat, the link. And I need to be more consistent. I'm going to try to be more consistent. Like I'll come back every few months, post something, disappear for a while, come back. But I'm going to try to be more consistent and stuff. I'm going to do a lot of fossil hunting expeditions around where I live and post videos like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably going to be the
So you
main
can
focus.
teach people how to find fossils of their own, on their own and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and just random fossils that I find that I think are cool. You know, I've got a few spots here in Arkansas that I know where to find a bunch of them, and I really want to find Carboniferous shark fossils and Eocene whale fossils. That's what I'm looking for. Haven't found any yet, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, just humor me. Is that possible, or is that a fool's errand?
It's possible,
Would,
but
would it be the
it's
first, or?
No, it wouldn't be the first, but it's very rare to find.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. But it's just something interesting to me that I really want to see.
That is pretty neat. All right, so fossil hunter extraordinaire Jackson Rowe and me, your humble host, Mr. Anderson, with a very cordial interaction for once on my channel. And
See, I'm too nice. That's my problem.
you know what? You and I will work on that. We'll work on that.
I need to get mean.
Yeah. I'll show you some. You know what the beauty of it is like, you know, if you know what you're doing, you can be like incredibly mean and still like say it in a very polite way.
Yeah.
You know, like the art of good lawyering is saying like fundamentally mean things or doing fundamentally mean things to people, but being very nice about it.
Yeah. I need to learn that trick.
No, we'll get there. We'll get there. But I think that's it for now, you guys. We're gonna sign off here, and thank you once again, Jackson, for coming on, and thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you later.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.